The delicate chime of fine china and hushed conversations filled the private dining room of Kintsugi, one of Tokyo's most exclusive restaurants. Hidden behind ornate screens and accessible only to those whose names open doors most would never even know existed. I adjusted my crisp black uniform for the 100th time, my fingers trembling slightly as they smoothed over the fabric. 3 months into this job, and I still felt like an imposter. "May, table 7 needs more sake," Hiroshi, the head waiter, whispered as he passed, his voice betraying irritation I'd come to recognize. I was still learning, still making mistakes, still the American girl who'd come to Tokyo to find herself after college, and somehow landed a job at a restaurant that served people who could buy and sell my entire hometown without blinking. "Hi," I responded, bowing slightly before hurrying toward the service area. The weight of eyes followed me. I'd grown accustomed to the stares. My half-Japanese heritage made me exotic enough to be interesting, but foreign enough to be suspect. Not quite belonging anywhere was my perpetual state. Table 7 was in the far corner, shrouded in shadows cast by traditional paper screens. I'd been warned about this table when I started my shift. Important guests. Very important. The kind that made even Hiroshi's perpetually stern face tighten with anxiety. As I approached with the sake tray, I kept my eyes downcast as instructed. 3 men sat at the table, their suits midnight black and impeccably tailored. 2 faced the door, sentinels more than diners. The 3rd man had his back to me, but even seated, I could sense something commanding in the set of his shoulders. "Excuse me," I murmured softly in Japanese, bowing as I set down the sake. The conversation halted abruptly. In the silence, I caught the faint scent of something unexpected. Not the standard blend of expensive cologne and cigarettes that usually surrounded men like these, but something reminiscent of cedar and rain-soaked earth. I risked a glance upward. The man with his back to the door had turned slightly. He couldn't have been much older than 30. His features sharp and perfect, like they'd been carved from stone by a master sculptor. His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. Dark, intelligent, and utterly cold. Something inside me froze, a primal instinct warning of danger. "Thank you," he said in English, his accent barely perceptible. "You're new." It wasn't a question. I nodded, unable to find my voice. "American?" he asked, switching effortlessly between languages. "Yes," I managed, half on my father's side. One perfectly arched eyebrow rose slightly, the only indication of interest on his otherwise impassive face. I felt trapped in his gaze, like a butterfly pinned to velvet. The other men at the table exchanged glances. "Your name?" he asked. "May," I whispered, then cleared my throat. "May Walker." He nodded once, dismissively, and I took the hint, backing away with another bow. My heart pounded in my chest as I retreated to the service area. I pressed my palm against the wall, steadying myself. "Are you trying to get fired?" Hiroshi appeared beside me, his voice a harsh whisper. "You do not speak to Tanaka-san unless spoken to. And even then, you say as little as possible." "Tanaka-san?" I asked, the name unfamiliar. Hiroshi's eyes widened in disbelief. "Kazuto Tanaka. He owns this restaurant, and half of Shinjuku. And you?" He shook his head. "Just stay away from that table. I'll handle it myself." For the next hour, I kept to my other tables, though I couldn't help stealing glances at table 7. Tanaka remained still, speaking rarely. But when he did, the other men leaned in, hanging on every word. Twice I caught him watching me, his expression unreadable. As the night wore on, the restaurant emptied gradually until only Tanaka's party remained. I was clearing a nearby table when a phone rang. Not the subtle vibration of a cell phone, but the harsh ring of the restaurant's private line at the service station. I was closest. "Answer it," Hiroshi said, his hands full with trays. I picked up the receiver. "Kintsugi Restaurant, good evening." A rapid stream of Japanese filled my ear, too fast for my intermediate skills to follow completely. Something about a delivery tomorrow, changes to the schedule. I recognized the word for boss repeated several times. "I'm sorry," I said in Japanese. "Could you speak more slowly, please? I don't understand." The voice on the other end switched to English, annoyed. "Who is this? Put Tanaka-san on immediately." I froze. I'm just a waitress. Let me get..." A hand appeared beside me, taking the receiver from my grasp. I hadn't heard him approach. How could someone move so silently? Tanaka stood inches from me, his proximity sending a shock through my system. Up close, he was even more intimidating, taller than I'd realized, his presence seeming to consume all the oxygen in the room. "Hi," he said into the phone, his voice low. He listened for a moment, his eyes never leaving my face. I wanted to step away, to create some distance, but my back was already against the counter. I was trapped between the solid wood and his solid frame. He spoke again, rapid Japanese that I couldn't follow, except for one phrase at the end that was unmistakable. "She stays." He hung up the phone. "You understood that call," he stated. "Only parts," I admitted, heart racing. "Something about a delivery schedule?" His eyes narrowed slightly. "You speak Japanese?" "Some." "My mother is Japanese. I've been studying since I came here, but I'm not fluent." "How long have you worked here?" 3 months. "Before that?" I swallowed. "I taught English at a small school in Roppongi. But the program lost funding." He studied me for a long moment, then reached into his jacket. I flinched involuntarily, earning the ghost of a smile from him. He pulled out a business card instead, holding it between 2 fingers. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m., my office." He placed the card on the counter beside me. "Don't be late." Before I could respond, he turned and walked back to his table. The 2 men stood immediately, flanking him as they exited the restaurant without another word. Hiroshi appeared at my side, his face pale. "What did you do?" I looked down at the card. Embossed black text on cream paper read simply, "Kazuto Tanaka, Tanaka Group. He wants me to come to his office tomorrow," I said, my voice small even to my own ears. Hiroshi took the card from my trembling fingers, examining it before handing it back with a look I couldn't quite decipher. "Then you go, and you pray he only wants you for your language skills." That night, sleep eluded me in my tiny apartment. Rain pattered against the windows, creating shadows that danced across my ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tanaka's face, felt his presence looming over me. I told myself I wouldn't go, that I'd call in sick to the restaurant and forget I'd ever heard the name Kazuto Tanaka. But deep down, I knew that wasn't an option. Men like him didn't make requests. They gave commands, and the world bent to their will. And there had been something in his eyes when he looked at me. Something calculating and possessive that made my skin prickle with both fear and something else I wasn't ready to name. The next morning dawned gray and misty. I stood before my closet, paralyzed by indecision. What does one wear to meet a man who made hardened businessmen tremble? I settled on a simple black dress, modest but professional. The address on the card led me to a towering glass building in the financial district. My reflection in the polished doors showed a pale face with wide, frightened eyes. I barely recognized myself. The lobby security barely glanced at the card before directing me to a private elevator that required a key card. A stone-faced man in a suit materialized beside me, swiping his card without a word. We rode in silence to the top floor. The elevator opened directly into an expansive office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Tokyo, the city shrouded in mist like something from a dream. Tanaka stood with his back to me, hands clasped behind him, gazing out at the skyline. "May Walker," he said without turning. "You're 3 minutes early." I stepped forward, my heels silent against the plush carpet. "You said not to be late." Now he turned, and in the morning light, I could see him clearly for the first time. His suit was charcoal gray, custom-fitted to his athletic frame. His face was a study in perfect symmetry, but it was his eyes that captured me, dark as midnight, and just as fathomless. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, moving to sit behind an enormous desk of polished wood. "You own the restaurant where I work," I said carefully. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Among other things." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." I obeyed, perching on the edge of the seat, ready to flee though I knew there was nowhere to run. "You're educated," he said. "American University?" I nodded. "Columbia, literature and Japanese studies. And yet you wait tables." I lifted my chin slightly. "I came to Japan to connect with my heritage." The teaching position was temporary. When it ended, I took what I could find. Admirable, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. But wasteful. Before I could respond, the door opened, and one of the men from the restaurant entered, leaning down to whisper in Tanaka's ear. Tanaka's expression hardened, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "Bring him," he said. Moments later, the man returned with another in tow, Hiroshi, looking smaller and more frightened than I'd ever seen him. "Tanaka-san." Hiroshi bowed deeply, his voice shaking. "I didn't know she would come here. I would have stopped her." Tanaka's gaze flicked to me, then back to Hiroshi. "You misunderstand. I invited her." Confusion bloomed on Hiroshi's face. "But sir, the policy about staff has changed," Tanaka interrupted. "As of last night, Mei-san will no longer be waiting tables." My stomach dropped. "You're firing me?" Tanaka looked at me, something almost like amusement crossing his features. "No, Mei. I'm promoting you. You will work here as my personal assistant. Your language skills and education are wasted at Kintsugi." Hiroshi looked between us, bewildered. I shared his confusion but was too stunned to speak. "That will be all," Tanaka said to Hiroshi, who bowed again and backed out of the room, shooting me one last perplexed glance. When the door closed, Tanaka leaned forward, placing his palms flat on the desk. "The position pays 5 times your current salary. You'll have an apartment in the building where I can reach you easily. Your responsibilities will include translating documents, accompanying me to meetings, and ensuring my schedule runs smoothly." "I don't understand," I finally managed. "Why me?" "Because you understood enough of that phone call to be dangerous," he said plainly. "And because I prefer to keep potential problems close." A chill ran through me. "I'm not a problem." "No," he agreed, his eyes traveling over my face in a way that made heat rise to my cheeks. "Not yet. But you could be." In that moment, I realized I stood at a crossroads. Walking away wasn't an option. That much was clear from the guards outside and Tanaka's casual display of power. But stepping forward meant entering a world I knew nothing about, bound to a man who radiated danger from every pore. "Do I have a choice?" I asked quietly. Tanaka stood, circling the desk until he was standing beside me. He reached out, his fingers grazing my cheek so lightly I might have imagined it. "We always have choices, Mei. Some are just more painful than others." His phone rang, breaking the tension. He answered with a curt word, listened, then spoke again in Japanese, too fast for me to follow, except for the final phrase, the same as the night before. "She stays." As he hung up, his eyes met mine, and in their dark depths, I saw something that sent shivers down my spine. Not just power or authority, but a possessive hunger that marked me as found when I didn't even know I'd been lost. My first week working for Kazuto Tanaka passed in a blur of luxurious disorientation. The apartment he provided was larger than any place I'd ever lived. A sleek, minimalist space on the 48th floor, with windows that made Tokyo look like a glittering toy city far below. The closet came pre-filled with designer clothes in exactly my size, tags still attached. I tried not to think about how he knew my measurements. Each morning, a black Mercedes arrived precisely at 7:30 to deliver me to the Tanaka Group headquarters. Each evening, it returned me home after hours of translating documents, sitting silently in meetings where men discussed figures in the millions as casually as ordering coffee, and learning to anticipate Tanaka's needs before he expressed them. He was exacting, demanding perfection in everything from the temperature of his tea to the formatting of his correspondence. But he was never cruel. At least not to me. I'd seen him reduce grown men to stammering apologies with just a look, watched as competitors were crushed with a single phone call. Yet with me, he was different. Patient, almost gentle, though never warm. On the 8th day, everything changed. I was organizing his schedule when he emerged from his private conference room, followed by 3 men I'd come to recognize as his inner circle. Akira, his security chief, moved like a shadow, eyes constantly scanning for threats. Hayato, his legal counsel, carried a sleek briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. And Takeshi, his second in command, who watched me with undisguised suspicion whenever Tanaka wasn't looking. "Clear my calendar for the weekend," Tanaka said, stopping at my desk. "We're going to Hakone." I blinked up at him, confused. "We?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're my assistant, are you not?" "I require assistance." Behind him, Takeshi's expression darkened. "Of course," I said, fingers already moving over the keyboard. "I'll make the arrangements." "Already done," Tanaka replied. "Pack for 3 days. Bring something formal for dinner." Before I could respond, he was moving toward the elevator, Akira and Hayato flanking him like sentinels. Only Takeshi remained, hovering by my desk. "You know what he is, don't you?" he asked, voice low and dangerous. I kept my expression neutral. "My employer." Takeshi leaned closer, the scent of expensive cologne and cigarettes making me suppress a cough. "He's Yakuza. His father was Kumicho of the Tanakagumi before him. The businesses, the restaurants, they're just the surface. Beneath is blood and bone." My hand stilled on the keyboard. I'd suspected, of course. The whispers, the deference, the power that seemed too absolute for mere wealth. But hearing it confirmed made my stomach tighten into knots. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you're playing with fire," Takeshi replied. "And when he burns you, when he's done with his new toy, there won't be enough of you left to sweep away." He straightened, adjusting his tie. "Some of us have dedicated our lives to the Tanakagumi. We don't appreciate outsiders, especially foreign ones." With that, he walked away, leaving me shaken. I sat motionless, staring at the screen without seeing it. Yakuza. I was working for, living in a building owned by, dependent upon, a crime lord. I should run, take whatever money I'd saved and flee back to America. But where would I go? My father had remarried years ago, building a new family that had little room for reminders of his first wife, and my mother's family had disowned her when she married an American. I was alone, adrift between two cultures that both viewed me as other. And there was something else, something I was reluctant to admit even to myself. In Tanaka's orbit, for the first time in my life, I felt seen. Not as an exotic curiosity or a foreigner to be tolerated, but truly seen. His dark eyes missed nothing, demanded everything, offered, what, protection, purpose, danger? All three, perhaps. The next morning, the car came earlier than usual. The driver, Sato, a mountain of a man who rarely spoke, held the door as I slid into the back seat. To my surprise, Tanaka was already inside, reading something on his tablet. "Good morning," I said, fastening my seatbelt, acutely aware of his proximity in the confined space. He looked up, his eyes moving over my face with that same intense scrutiny that always made my pulse quicken. "You're troubled." It wasn't a question. Somehow he always knew. "No, The lie died on my lips at his raised eyebrow. "Takeshi spoke to me yesterday." Something dangerous flashed across Tanaka's face. "What did he say?" I hesitated, suddenly afraid I'd made a mistake. "He told me about your family business, the Tanakagumi," Tanaka said, setting aside his tablet. "And what else?" "He said I was temporary. A toy." The words burned my throat. Tanaka was silent for a long moment, his eyes never leaving mine. Then he reached across the space between us, his fingers catching my chin, tilting my face up. His touch was warm, firm, inescapable. "Do you feel like a toy, May?" he asked, voice low. I swallowed hard. "I don't know what I feel." "Fear," he supplied. "Curiosity. Attraction." His thumb brushed over my lower lip, so lightly it might have been my imagination. "All normal. All expected." "Is he right?" I whispered. "Am I temporary?" Something shifted in Tanaka's expression, a softening so subtle I might have missed it if I hadn't been watching him so closely. "Nothing in this life is permanent, but while you're mine, you're under my protection. Remember that. Mine." The word echoed in my head, simultaneously a threat and a promise. The car wound its way out of Tokyo, the urban sprawl gradually giving way to rolling hills and forests. Tanaka returned to his tablet, and I gazed out the window, lost in thought. After about 2 hours, we turned onto a private road that led to a traditional Japanese estate nestled against the mountains, surrounded by carefully manicured gardens. As we pulled up to the entrance, I noticed several black SUVs and men in suits patrolling the perimeter. Tanaka's hand brushed my arm as we exited the car. "Stay close," he murmured. "There will be other families here, business associates. They're not all friends." Inside, the estate was a harmonious blend of traditional Japanese architecture and modern luxury. A woman in a kimono bowed deeply as we entered. "Tanaka-sama," she greeted him. "Your usual suite is prepared." Tanaka nodded. "And a room for my assistant, adjoining." The woman's eyes flickered to me briefly before she bowed again. "Of course. This way, please." We followed her through corridors of polished wood, past rock gardens and koi ponds visible through open screens. Finally, she slid open a door revealing a spacious suite overlooking a private garden and the mountains beyond. Another door within led to a smaller but equally elegant room. "Rest," Tanaka said as the woman left us. "We have dinner with the Ishikawa family at 7. "Who are they?" I asked. "Potential allies," he replied. "The daughter will be there. She doesn't speak English. You'll translate." I nodded, understanding my role now. "Is there anything specific I should know?" Tanaka moved to the window, gazing out at the view. "They control shipping routes we need. The daughter studied in London. She'll be more comfortable with you than with our usual translators. And less suspicious," I added, the pieces falling into place. He turned, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly, perceptive. I decided to push my luck. "What exactly is your business, Tanaka-san?" "Kazuto," he corrected. "When we're alone, you call me Kazuto." The intimacy of it startled me. "Kazuto," I repeated, the name foreign on my tongue. "My business is influence," he said after a moment. "Some acquired through legitimate means, some not. All necessary." It wasn't really an answer, but I knew it was all I would get for now. He checked his watch, a subtle, understated timepiece that probably cost more than a year's rent at my old apartment. "The onsen is private until 5. You should experience it while you're here." With that, he left through a sliding door connecting to the garden, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The hot spring bath was heavenly after the long drive. I sank into the steaming water, letting it envelop me up to my shoulders. The outdoor bath was surrounded by rocks and bamboo, offering privacy while still providing a view of the mountains. Steam rose around me, carrying the mineral scent of the volcanic waters. I closed my eyes, trying to center myself. In just over a week, my entire life had transformed. I was bathing in a luxury onsen, preparing to help a Yakuza boss negotiate a business deal. I should be terrified. And part of me was. But another part, a part I barely recognized, was thrumming with an energy that felt dangerously close to excitement. A sound made my eyes snap open. Tanaka stood at the edge of the bath, wearing only a yukata loosely tied at the waist. I instinctively sank deeper into the water, though it did little to preserve my modesty. I thought you said it was private until 5, I stammered. "It is," he replied, slipping off the robe. "Private to us." I averted my eyes as he entered the water, but not before catching a glimpse of toned muscle and intricate tattoos that covered much of his torso and arms, a dragon coiled around his right arm, cherry blossoms and waves across his chest, traditional symbols of the Yakuza. He settled across from me, the water reaching mid-chest on his frame. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. "Your tattoos," I finally said, eyes fixed firmly on the water's surface. "They're beautiful." "Irizumi," he corrected. "Traditional hand-poked method. Each one took hundreds of hours." "Do they mean something?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. "Everything means something, May. The dragon is power. The cherry blossoms. The beauty and brevity of life." His voice dropped lower. "The waves. The unstoppable force of change." I risked looking up then. His wet hair hung loose around his face, softening his usually severe features. Steam curled around us, creating an otherworldly atmosphere where the normal rules seemed suspended. "Why am I really here?" I asked, the question that had been burning inside me since he'd appeared at my desk the day before. Tanaka's eyes held mine. "Because I want you to be. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters. He moved through the water toward me, each movement deliberate, predatory. You fascinate me. The American girl with Japanese eyes. Too honest for her own good. Too brave to run when she should. He stopped just short of touching me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, separate from the warmth of the bath. I've watched you, May. You observe. You listen. You understand more than you say. Is that why you hired me? To observe me? I hired you because you were wasted serving drinks to men unworthy of your attention. His hand emerged from the water, droplets running down his arm as he traced a finger along my collarbone. I keep you because I've never met anyone like you. My breath caught in my throat. His touch left a trail of fire across my skin that had nothing to do with the hot spring. Tanaka-sama. The voice came from the garden path. Tanaka withdrew his hand but didn't move away. What is it? He called, eyes still fixed on mine. Ishikawa-san has arrived early. He requests a meeting before dinner. Tanaka's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Tell him I'll join him shortly. Hi, Tanaka-sama. When the footsteps receded, Tanaka finally moved back. We'll continue this conversation later. He rose from the bath in one fluid motion, water streaming off his tattooed body. This time, I couldn't look away. He didn't reach for his yukata immediately, standing unabashed as my eyes traveled over the artwork etched into his skin. Only when my gaze returned to his face did he smile. A predator's smile, satisfied and hungry all at once. Dinner is in 2 hours, he said. Wear the red dress. With that, he wrapped himself in the robe and disappeared down the garden path, leaving me breathless and confused, and more certain than ever that I was venturing into dangerous territory. I found the red dress hanging in the closet of my room, along with several other evening gowns I hadn't packed. This one was simple but elegant, crimson silk that clung in all the right places, with a modest neckline but a daring slit up one side. I wondered if Tanaka had selected it himself or delegated the task. Either possibility left me unsettled. As I applied makeup, I caught sight of myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked polished, confident, belonging in the world of luxury and power I'd stumbled into. But her eyes, my eyes, held a wariness that couldn't be concealed with cosmetics. A gentle knock at my door announced the arrival of one of the attendants, who guided me through the estate to a private dining room. Tanaka was already there, deep in conversation with an older Japanese man, Ishikawa presumably. Beside them sat a young woman about my age, her expression carefully neutral. Tanaka looked up as I entered, his conversation halting mid-sentence. Something flashed in his eyes as they traveled over me, something possessive and approving that made heat rise to my cheeks. He extended a hand, beckoning me forward. May, he said, meet Ishikawa Haruto and his daughter Yuki. I bowed respectfully, first to the father, then to the daughter. It's an honor to meet you both. Yuki's eyes widened slightly at my Japanese. She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her serious face. The honor is mine, she replied in Japanese. It's so refreshing to meet another woman here. These gatherings are usually filled with old men discussing boring business. I translated for Tanaka, softening her words slightly. His lips twitched in what might have been amusement. Tell her I hope we prove less boring, he said. As dinner progressed, I fell into the rhythm of translation, moving between languages as needed. Yuki was indeed more forthcoming with me than with the men, sharing details about her life in London, her father's business. I caught subtle cues from Tanaka about which information to emphasize in my translations, which to downplay. Halfway through the meal, Tanaka's hand came to rest on the small of my back, as he leaned in to hear something Ishikawa was saying. The touch was casual, almost proprietary. Across the table, I noticed Yuki observing the gesture, a knowing look crossing her face. When the men excused themselves to discuss business in private, Yuki switched to English, surprising me. So, she said, sipping her sake, how long have you been with Tanaka-san? Just over a week, I replied. I'm his assistant. She laughed lightly. Is that what they're calling it now? My cheeks burned. It's not like that. No? She raised an eyebrow. He watches you like a man dying of thirst watches water. And the red dress? That's his signature color. Everyone here knows what it means when a woman wears Tanaka red. My heart seemed to stop, then restart at double speed. What does it mean? Yuki leaned closer, lowering her voice. It means you're his, off limits to everyone else. Her eyes flicked to the door where the men had disappeared. He's not known for sharing. You misunderstand, I insisted, though my voice lacked conviction. It's a professional relationship. She gave me a pitying look. There's nothing professional about the way he looks at you, or the way you look at him. She took another sip of sake. Be careful, Mason. Men like Tanaka don't love, they possess. And what they possess, they never release. Before I could respond, the door slid open again. Tanaka and Ishikawa returned, their expressions revealing nothing of their discussion, but something had shifted. A new tension hummed in the air between them. May, Tanaka said, his voice cool and controlled. Ishikawa-san has invited us to join him tomorrow for a boat tour of Lake Ashi. You'll accompany me. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Under the table, Yuki squeezed my hand briefly in what felt like solidarity. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of polite conversation and calculated maneuvers. I played my role, translating when needed, smiling at the right moments. But inside, my mind raced with Yuki's words. Tanaka red, his signature color, his mark of possession. When Ishikawa and his daughter finally departed, Tanaka remained seated, motioning for me to stay as well. The attendants cleared the dishes silently, then disappeared, leaving us alone in the room. You and Yuki seem to get along well, he observed, pouring sake into my cup without asking. She's interesting, I said carefully. She told me about her studies in London. And what else did she tell you? His dark eyes bore into mine, and I knew lying would be futile. She told me what it means when a woman wears this color. A slow smile spread across his face. And what did you say? I told her she was mistaken, that our relationship is professional. Is it? He stood in one fluid motion, circling behind me. His hands came to rest on my shoulders, thumbs tracing small circles at the base of my neck. Is that all you want it to be? My breath hitched as his touch sent electric currents down my spine. I don't know what I want, don't you? His voice was a low rumble near my ear. One hand slid from my shoulder to the nape of my neck, fingers threading through my hair. Your body betrays you, May. Every time I touch you, every time I come near. I closed my eyes, unable to deny it. From the first moment in the restaurant, something had drawn me to him, something beyond fear or fascination. It's dangerous, I whispered. Yes, he agreed, his grip tightening slightly in my hair. I am dangerous. The question is whether you're brave enough to face that danger. He released me suddenly, stepping back. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be challenging. Without another word, he left, the door sliding closed behind him with a soft whisper that seemed to echo in the emptiness he left behind. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay on the futon, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment since that fateful night at the restaurant. How had I ended up here? In a luxury ryokan, wearing a dress the color of blood and desire, caught in the orbit of a man who commanded fear and respect in equal measure. More troubling still, why didn't I want to escape? Dawn was breaking when I finally drifted off, only to be awakened by a gentle knock at my door 2 hours later. An attendant entered, bearing a tray with tea and a light breakfast. Tanaka-sama requests you join him in the garden when you're ready, she said, bowing deeply. I dressed quickly in a simple sundress, blue, not red, and followed a stone path through immaculately maintained gardens. Tanaka sat beside a koi pond, watching the colorful fish glide beneath the surface. He wore casual clothes today, dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal the edges of his tattoos. Somehow the informal attire made him seem more approachable, though no less dangerous. You didn't sleep, he said without turning. I stopped a few feet away. How could you possibly know that? Now he looked up, and the intensity in his gaze made me catch my breath. I know everything about you, May. The shadows under your eyes, the tension in your shoulders, the way you hold yourself when you're uncertain. That's unsettling. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. To be known completely? Most people crave it. Most people don't have a Yakuza boss studying their every move. The word hung between us. Yakuza. I'd never spoken it aloud before. Had danced around the nature of his business. His expression didn't change, but something darkened in his eyes. So, Takeshi told you the truth? Yes. He sighed, gesturing for me to sit beside him on the stone bench. I hesitated, then complied, leaving a careful distance between us. My father was old-school Yakuza, he said, returning his gaze to the fish. Protection rackets, gambling, prostitution, violence as a first resort, not a last one. He spoke matter-of-factly, without emotion. He believed in tradition above all else, including the tradition that says gaijin are never to be trusted. I remained silent, sensing there was more to come. When I took over after his death, I began steering the Tanaka Gumi in a new direction. Legitimate businesses, international connections, violence only when necessary. His jaw tightened. Not everyone approved. Ishikawa was one of my father's closest allies. He sees my changes as weakness. Is that why we're here? To prove him wrong? Tanaka's eyes met mine. We're here because he controls shipping routes I need, and because his daughter studied international finance. She's progressive, like you. She'll influence him. So I'm a tool, I said, unable to keep the hurt from my voice, to get to Yuki. In a flash, his hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Not painfully, but firmly enough that I couldn't pull away. You are many things, May Walker. A tool is not one of them. The intensity in his voice made me shiver. Then what am I? His grip softened, thumb brushing over my pulse point. Something unexpected, something I didn't plan for. Before I could respond, footsteps approached on the garden path. Tanaka released my wrist but remained close, his shoulder almost touching mine. Akira appeared, his face tense. Tanaka-sama, we've received word. The boat tour today, there's been a change of guard. Shimada's men will be providing security. A muscle in Tanaka's jaw twitched. Shimada, you're certain? Hi, 3 of his top lieutenants will be on board. Tanaka was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Inform Takeshi. Double our security detail, and check my usual contingencies. Akira bowed and departed as silently as he'd arrived. I waited until he was out of earshot before asking, Who is Shimada? A rival, Tanaka replied, his voice clipped. One who would benefit greatly from my disappearance. Cold fear washed over me. You think it's a trap? We should cancel. And show weakness. He shook his head. No, but you will stay here. What? No, This is not a discussion. He cut me off, voice hardening. Shimada's men are unpredictable, volatile. But you need me to translate for Yuki, I protested. I need you alive more. The words hung in the air between us. His face remained impassive, but something in his eyes, a flicker of what might have been concern, or something deeper, made my chest tighten. I'm coming with you, I said quietly. That's my job. Your job is to do as I say. My job is to assist you. And you said yourself that Yuki is key to convincing her father. I held his gaze, refusing to be intimidated. I'm not afraid. You should be. But I could see him wavering. I'll stay by your side the entire time, I promised. At the first sign of trouble, I'll do exactly as you say. Tanaka studied me for a long moment, then sighed, a sound of equal parts frustration and resignation. If you're determined to put yourself in danger, at least wear this. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small pendant on a silver chain. Keep it with you at all times today. I took it, examining the delicate cherry blossom carved from some kind of pale stone. It's beautiful. It's jade, he said. It belonged to my mother. He hesitated, then added, It has a tracking device embedded in it. If we're separated, I'll find you. The implication sent a chill down my spine, but I slipped the necklace over my head, the pendant cool against my skin. Thank you. He reached out, adjusting the pendant to lie perfectly centered at the base of my throat. His fingers lingered, tracing my collarbone in a gesture that was becoming familiar. The boat departs in an hour. Wear something you can move in easily, but bring a light jacket. The lake can be cold. An hour later, we were walking down to the dock where a sleek motorboat awaited. Ishikawa and Yuki were already aboard, along with several men in suits who I assumed were security. Tanaka's own security team flanked us, Akira and 3 others, all moving with the hyper-vigilant awareness of men expecting trouble. Yuki waved when she saw me, seeming genuinely pleased. "Mei-san, I'm so glad you could join us. Father's business associates are usually so boring." I smiled, grateful for her friendly presence amid the tension. I've never been on Lake Ashi before. It's beautiful. As the boat pulled away from the dock, I couldn't help noticing the way Tanaka positioned himself, always keeping me slightly behind him, always with a clear line of sight to the other security team. 3 men on the opposite side of the boat watched us with expressionless faces. Shimada's men, I presumed. Yuki linked her arm through mine, drawing me toward the bow. "Come. The view is best from here." I glanced at Tanaka, who gave a barely perceptible nod. Akira followed a few steps behind, as Yuki led me to the front of the boat. "Your boss is very protective of you," she observed in English, voice low enough that only I could hear. "He's protective of all his employees," I replied, touching the jade pendant unconsciously. Yuki's eyes followed the movement, widening slightly when she saw the necklace. "That's his mother's, isn't it? I've seen him wearing it on occasion." My fingers froze on the pendant. He said it was hers. Yes. She looked back at Tanaka, who was engaged in conversation with her father, though his eyes flicked to us regularly. "You know, in traditional Japanese culture, giving a family heirloom like that, it has significance." "What kind of significance?" I asked, pulse quickening. Before she could answer, a commotion broke out at the stern, raised voices, a sudden movement. Tanaka was on his feet in an instant, Akira at his side. One of Shimada's men had his hand inside his jacket. Everything happened so fast. Tanaka pushed Ishikawa down, shielding him with his body. Akira drew a weapon I hadn't realized he was carrying. Yuki screamed, clutching my arm. And then, the sharp crack of gunfire. Chaos erupted. More shots. Yuki and I dropped to the deck. Through the pandemonium, I heard Tanaka's voice calling my name. I looked up to see him fighting his way toward us, expression fierce. Behind him, one of Shimada's men raised his gun, aiming directly at Tanaka's back. "Behind you!" I screamed. Tanaka spun, but too late. The gun fired. He staggered, clutching his side, but remained standing. With a movement so swift I barely saw it, he drew his own weapon and fired twice. The man collapsed. Akira reached us, pulling Yuki and me to our feet. "This way," he ordered, pushing us toward a small cabin. "Stay inside. Lock the door." "Tanaka," I gasped, trying to see through the mayhem. "He's hurt." "Go!" Akira shouted, shoving us into the cabin and slamming the door. Yuki was sobbing, her entire body shaking. I locked the door as instructed, then guided her to sit on a bench. "It's going to be all right," I said, hoping I wasn't lying. "Breathe, Yuki." More gunshots sounded outside, then shouts. I moved to the small window, trying to see what was happening. The boat was circling back toward shore, but the fighting continued on deck. I caught glimpses of Tanaka, still on his feet despite the blood staining his shirt, moving with lethal precision. I clutched the jade pendant, its edges digging into my palm. This was the world I'd entered, a world of blood and violence, of power struggles played out with bullets rather than boardroom negotiations. I should be terrified, desperate to escape. Instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me, a clarity I'd never experienced before. When the boat finally docked, an eerie silence had fallen. The door to our cabin opened, revealing Akira, his suit torn and bloodied but his expression as impassive as ever. "It's over," he said simply. "Come." I helped Yuki to her feet, her face pale and tear-streaked. "My father?" she whispered. "Unharmed," Akira assured her. Tanaka-sama protected him. We emerged onto the deck. 4 bodies lay covered with jackets. Ishikawa sat on a bench, looking shaken but uninjured, and Tanaka. He stood at the bow, one hand pressed to his side, staring out at the lake as if nothing had happened. When he heard us, he turned. His eyes found mine immediately, relief washing over his features before the mask of control returned. "Take Ishikawa-san and his daughter back to the ryokan," he ordered Akira. "Ensure they're comfortable. Double the security on their rooms." And you, sir? Akira asked. I'll follow shortly. First, I need to speak with May. Akira hesitated, then nodded, guiding Yuki and her father off the boat. Tanaka's remaining security team moved discreetly to the dock, leaving us alone on the blood-spattered deck. I approached him slowly. You're hurt. It's nothing. A graze. I could see through the tear in his shirt that it was more than a graze. A bullet had carved a path along his ribs, leaving a deep, bleeding furrow. You need a doctor. What I need, he said, voice low and intense, is to know that you're all right. I'm fine. Thanks to you and Akira, he closed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hands coming up to frame my face. When the shooting started and I couldn't reach you. His voice trailed off, something raw and vulnerable flickering in his eyes. I'm here, I whispered. I'm safe. His thumbs brushed over my cheeks, coming away wet with tears I hadn't realized I'd shed. You warned me about the man behind me. You saved my life. Before I could respond, his mouth was on mine, hard and desperate. The kiss was everything I'd secretly imagined, and nothing I'd been prepared for. Possessive, demanding, consuming. I responded without thinking, my hands clutching at his shoulders, heedless of the blood. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. I shouldn't have brought you here. I put you in danger. I chose to come, I reminded him. I'm not a child, Kazuto. I make my own decisions. Something darkened in his eyes at the sound of his name. And what decision are you making now, May Walker? Now that you've seen the truth of my world? I looked around at the aftermath of violence, at the blood staining the deck, at the man before me who had killed without hesitation to protect what was his. The answer should have been obvious. I should run as far and as fast as possible. Instead, I reached up, touching the jade pendant at my throat. I'm staying, I said softly. With you. His expression transformed, hunger and relief, and something I couldn't name washing over his features. He pulled me against him, his embrace tight enough to hurt, his face buried in my hair. Mine, he whispered, the word vibrating through me like a vow. You're mine now. And in that moment, standing on a boat where men had died minutes before, I knew with absolute certainty that I had crossed a line from which there would be no return. The aftermath of the lake attack unfolded with ruthless efficiency. We returned to the ryokan where a doctor, evidently on Tanaka's payroll, was waiting to treat his wound. I sat in the corner of the room, watching as the bullet graze was cleaned, stitched, and bandaged, Tanaka's face betraying no pain throughout the process. Police came and went, their questions met with a carefully constructed story about a rival business group and unfortunate escalation. Money changed hands. Reports were altered. By evening, the official narrative had been established. A terrible boating accident, mechanical failure, tragic deaths. I observed it all with strange detachment, as if watching a film rather than living through its events. My world had shifted on its axis, realigning itself around the man who now sat across from me in his private suite, sipping sake as if we were discussing dinner plans, instead of the 4 deaths we'd witnessed that morning. You're very quiet, Tanaka observed, setting down his cup. I'm processing, I replied honestly. This isn't exactly a normal day for me. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. No, I suppose not. He studied me for a moment. Does it frighten you? What happened today? Yes, I admitted, but not in the way you might think. I met his gaze steadily. What frightens me is how quickly I'm adapting to it, to your world. He leaned forward, dark eyes intent on mine. Tell me what you're thinking. I took a deep breath. I'm thinking that I watched men die today, and instead of being horrified or traumatized, I'm sitting here wondering how the Ishikawa negotiations will proceed now. I shook my head slightly. What does that make me? A survivor, he said simply. Someone who sees reality for what it is and adapts. Is that why you chose me? Because you saw that quality in me? Tanaka was quiet for a long moment. I chose you because you answered a phone call that wasn't meant for you, and instead of cowering, you faced me directly. His voice lowered. I kept you because I saw something in your eyes that first night, something that matched what's inside me. And what's that? Hunger, he said, the word hanging between us like a challenge. For something more than the ordinary life you were living. The truth of it struck me like a physical blow. All my life I'd felt like I was watching the world through glass, never quite belonging, never fully engaged. Until now. Until him. What happens next? I asked, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. Ishikawa will agree to our terms, Tanaka replied. Today proved I can protect him better than Shimada ever could. And us? The question slipped out before I could stop it. What happens with us? He set down his sake cup and rose, moving to kneel before me. His hand came up to touch the jade pendant at my throat. That depends on you. His fingers traced a path from the pendant to my collarbone, then up the side of my neck, leaving fire in their wake. I want you, May. Not just as my assistant, not just in my bed. I want all of you. My breath caught. You barely know me. I know enough, he countered. I know you're brave and intelligent. I know you see the world as it truly is, not as you wish it to be. I know your touch makes me forget the weight I carry. His hand cupped my cheek. The rest, we'll learn together. I leaned into his touch, desire and fear warring within me. Your world is dangerous. Yes, he agreed. And now it's your world too. His thumb brushed over my lower lip. Unless you choose to leave. You can walk away tonight. Return to Tokyo. To America. I won't stop you. I searched his face, looking for deception, finding none. You would let me go? Difficult. It would be, he admitted. A flash of something possessive darkening his gaze. But yes. The choice is yours, May. It always has been. In that moment, I knew he was giving me a gift few in his world ever received. The freedom to choose, rather than having the decision made for me, and somehow, that made my choice clearer. I leaned forward, closing the distance between us, and pressed my lips to his. Unlike our first kiss on the boat, this one was gentle, questioning. His response was immediate, his hand sliding into my hair, holding me to him as the kiss deepened. When we finally broke apart, his eyes had gone dark with desire. Is that your answer? Yes, I whispered. I'm staying. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, triumph, hunger all mingling together. He stood, pulling me to my feet and into his arms. You're certain? I nodded, unable to form words as his hands traveled down my sides, coming to rest at my hips. Say it, he demanded softly. I need to hear the words. I'm yours, I said, the admission both terrifying and exhilarating. I choose this. I choose you. The restraint he'd been exercising shattered. His mouth claimed mine, hungry and demanding, as he backed me toward the bedroom. Any hesitation I might have felt dissolved under the heat of his touch, the intensity of his desire. Clothes fell away, his hands and lips exploring every inch of newly exposed skin with reverent attention. His body was a canvas of art and scars, the Irizumi tattoos extending across his chest, down his arms, over his back. A dragon, cherry blossoms, waves, and symbols I didn't recognize, all rendered in vibrant colors that seemed to move in the dim light. I traced them with my fingertips, learning the map of him, as he did the same to me. Beautiful, he murmured against my skin. So beautiful. When we finally came together, it was with an intensity that bordered on desperation, as if we were both trying to claim and be claimed in equal measure. Afterward, lying in the tangled sheets with his arm around me, my head on his chest, I felt a strange sense of peace, as if I'd been searching for something my entire life without knowing what it was, only to find it in the most unexpected place. What are you thinking? He asked, fingers tracing lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. That I should be more frightened by today than I am, I admitted. By all of this. He was quiet for a moment. Fear is natural. Wise, even. But you've shown more courage than most men in my organization. His hand moved to the jade pendant, which I'd never removed. This suited you from the moment I put it on you. Yuki said it has significance, giving a family heirloom. A small smile played at his lips. It does. His fingers closed around the pendant. It means I've chosen you. As what? As mine, he said simply. In every way that matters. The words should have alarmed me. They spoke of possession, of a decision made without my input. Yet I found myself comforted by them, wrapped in the certainty of his claim like a protective cloak. Sleep, he murmured, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Tomorrow, we return to Tokyo. Things will be different now. I didn't ask how. Instead, I let sleep claim me, safe in the arms of a dangerous man who had somehow become my sanctuary. The journey back to Tokyo the next day was tense but uneventful. Ishikawa and his daughter traveled separately, but not before Yuki embraced me, whispering in my ear, "Be careful with your heart." The warning came too late. My heart was already inextricably tangled with Kazuto Tanaka's world. As we entered the city, Tanaka made a call, speaking rapid Japanese that I was beginning to understand more easily with each passing day. When he hung up, he turned to me. "There's something you need to see," he said. "A part of my life I haven't shown you yet." The car turned down unfamiliar streets, eventually pulling up to an unmarked building in a quiet neighborhood. Unlike the gleaming tower of Tanaka Group headquarters, this was a traditional structure, modestly elegant rather than ostentatious. "What is this place?" I asked as we stepped from the car. "My home," he replied. "My real home, not the penthouse where I sometimes sleep." I followed him through a gate into a courtyard garden, immaculately maintained with stone lanterns and a small koi pond. The house itself was traditional Japanese architecture, with sliding paper doors and a wooden veranda wrapping around the perimeter. Inside, the space opened into a sunlit living area with minimalist furniture and art. Not the ostentatious displays of wealth I might have expected, but carefully chosen pieces that spoke of refined taste. An elderly woman appeared, bowing deeply to Tanaka. "Tanaka-sama," she greeted him. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." "Change of plans, Hana," he replied. "This is May Walker. She'll be staying with me from now on." The woman's eyes widened slightly before she composed herself, bowing to me as well. "Welcome, Walker-san." "Thank you," I replied in Japanese, bowing in return. "Please call me May." A hint of approval flickered in her eyes before she turned back to Tanaka. "Shall I prepare tea?" "Please," he nodded. When she'd gone, he guided me deeper into the house. "Hana has been with my family since I was a child. She's one of the few people I trust completely." "She seems surprised to see me," I observed. "I've never brought anyone here before," he said simply. "This place is separate from my business, my sanctuary." The significance of his words wasn't lost on me. He was showing me a side of himself few ever saw, inviting me into the private world behind his carefully constructed public persona. He led me through several rooms, each minimally furnished but with at least one striking piece of art. A painted scroll, an ancient vase, a small statue. Finally, we came to a room that was clearly his office. Unlike the modern, intimidating space at Tanaka Group headquarters, this one felt more personal. Books lined the walls. A traditional low writing desk occupied one corner, and on the wall hung a single photograph. A beautiful Japanese woman holding a small boy, both smiling. "My mother," he said, following my gaze, "before my father's world destroyed her." I moved closer to the photograph, studying the woman whose jade pendant now hung around my neck. "What happened to her?" Tanaka was silent for a moment. "She came from an old family, traditional values. Marrying my father was considered beneath her, but she loved him." His voice hardened, until she discovered exactly what kind of man he was, what kind of business he ran. Did she leave? She tried. His face darkened with old pain. A rival family used her escape attempt as an opportunity. They took her, thinking to use her as leverage against my father. I felt a chill run down my spine. "What did your father do?" "What the old code demanded. He refused to negotiate with them. Said it would show weakness." Tanaka's jaw tightened. "They returned her body 3 days later." Horror washed through me. "How old were you?" 8, he said, old enough to understand what had happened. Old enough to swear I would never be like him. I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm so sorry." He accepted the touch, but his expression remained distant, lost in memory. My father saw emotion as weakness. After my mother died, he was determined to toughen me. His methods were effective. His eyes refocused on me. It's why I've been changing the Tanaka-gumi, moving away from the old ways, building something that doesn't rely on fear alone. Is that why Shimada's men attacked? Because they see you as weak? His lips curved in a humorless smile. They see change as weakness, innovation as betrayal of tradition. He led me to sit on a cushion near the desk. You need to understand what you've chosen, May. The world you're entering, it's not just business rivals and shipping contracts. There are men who want me dead simply because I believe there's a better way to build power than through bloodshed. Like your mother believed, I said softly. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, then a deep, painful recognition. Yes, he agreed, like my mother. Hana appeared with a tea tray, setting it carefully between us before withdrawing silently. Tanaka prepared the tea with practiced movements, the ritual seeming to center him. There's something else you should see, he said after we'd drunk our tea in contemplative silence. Something that might help you understand. He led me to another room, this one clearly more private. A futon laid on a slightly raised platform. A wardrobe of dark wood stood against one wall. And on another wall, a shrine, a small altar with candles, incense, and another photograph of his mother, this one showing her alone, smiling serenely at the camera. Tanaka knelt before the shrine, lighting an incense stick with practiced movements. I knelt beside him, watching as he closed his eyes briefly, his lips moving in what might have been a prayer. I come here every day, he said quietly, to remember why I do what I do, why I'm changing the Tanaka-gumi, even when it puts a target on my back. For her, I said, and for myself, he added. I saw what my father's way did to him. It hollowed him out until there was nothing left but coldness and calculation. He turned to me, his eyes intense. I don't want that life, May. I never have. I reached for his hand again. What do you want? He laced his fingers through mine. Power, yes. Security. But also, he seemed to struggle for the words. Connection. Something real. Someone who sees me. Not just the kumicho of the Tanaka-gumi. I see you, I whispered. His free hand came up to cut my cheek. Yes, he agreed. You do. From that first night, it's why I couldn't let you go. He leaned forward, kissing me with a gentleness I hadn't experienced from him before. Not the desperate passion of the boat, or the possessive claiming of the night before, but something almost reverent. When we separated, he rested his forehead against mine. Stay with me, he said softly. Here, in my home. Not just as my assistant or my lover, but as my partner. Partner in what? In everything, he replied. My business, my life, my future. His thumb traced my cheekbone. The path I've chosen isn't easy, May. Changing the Tanaka-gumi means making enemies, powerful ones, but with you beside me. He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. I understood what he was offering, not just protection or passion, but purpose, a chance to be part of something meaningful, to help transform a world built on violence into something sustainable. And more than that, the chance to be truly seen, truly known, by someone who understood the parts of me I was only beginning to recognize myself. Yes, I said simply. I'll stay. The tension seemed to drain from his body, as if he'd been holding his breath, uncertain of my answer despite everything that had passed between us. There will be challenges, he warned. Not everyone will accept you easily. Takeshi and others of the old guard. I'm not afraid of Takeshi, I interrupted. Or anyone else who stands in your way, in our way. A slow smile spread across his face. Not the predatory one I'd seen before, but something warmer, more genuine. Our way, he repeated, as if testing the words. I like that. That night, I slept in his bed, in his home, surrounded by the quiet elegance he kept hidden from the world. As dawn broke, I woke to find him watching me, his expression unguarded in the early light. What happens now? I asked, voice husky with sleep. He traced a finger along my bare shoulder. Now we build something new, he said. Together. I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be, or how soon they would be tested. I only knew that for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be, in the arms of a dangerous man who was showing me, day by day, that even the darkest worlds contained unexpected light. 3 days later, I moved permanently into Tanaka's home. My meager belongings from my apartment looked out of place among his carefully curated possessions, but he insisted on making space for them. "This is your home now," he said, as he cleared an entire wardrobe for my clothes. Not just mine. The transition from assistant to partner wasn't without its challenges. At Tanaka Group headquarters, whispers followed me through the corridors. Takeshi's face darkened whenever he saw me at Tanaka's side in meetings. And there were others, men with hard eyes and traditional values, who clearly resented my presence. But there were allies too. Akira, whose stoic exterior masked a fierce loyalty, took it upon himself to teach me self-defense. "The Kumicho values you," he said during our first session, "so you must be able to protect yourself when he cannot be at your side." Hana, initially reserved, warmed to me when she discovered my genuine interest in Japanese culture and language. She began teaching me the proper way to conduct tea ceremony, to arrange flowers, to move through the traditional house with grace. "The mistress of a household like this should understand its rhythms," she said one afternoon, as she demonstrated the correct way to fold a kimono. I began, then stopped. What was I exactly? Tanaka hadn't put a label on our relationship, and I hadn't asked for one. Hana gave me a knowing look. "The jade pendant," she said simply. "He gave you his mother's jade. That is not a small thing, Mason." That evening, as we sat on the veranda overlooking the garden, I found the courage to ask the question that had been on my mind. "What am I to you exactly?" I said, watching his profile in the fading light. Tanaka turned to me, one eyebrow raised slightly. "You're mine," he replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "And I am yours. That's not very specific." A small smile played at his lips. "Would you prefer labels? Girlfriend? Lover? Partner?" He reached for my hand. "In my world, such distinctions are unnecessary. What matters is that you belong with me, and I with you." "And everyone knows this because of the jade?" I touched the pendant that I hadn't removed since he'd placed it around my neck. "Yes," he said, "but more importantly, they know it because I've shown them." His fingers tightened around mine. "By bringing you into my home, by having you at my side in meetings, by making it clear that disrespect to you is disrespect to me." I thought about the ways he'd integrated me into his life over the past days, introducing me to his closest associates, explaining aspects of the business I hadn't been privy to before, even consulting me on decisions that would once have been made without my input. "I still have much to learn," I said. "We both do," he replied. "This is new territory for me as well, May. I've never shared my life this way before." The admission warmed me more than any declaration of love might have. For a man like Tanaka, vulnerability was rarer and more precious than any emotion. A month passed, each day drawing me deeper into Tanaka's world. I learned the complex hierarchy of the Tanaka Gumi, the delicate balance between legitimate business and shadow enterprises, the art of negotiation when backed by unspoken power. My Japanese improved rapidly, necessity being the greatest teacher. And with each night spent in Tanaka's arms, each morning waking to his watchful gaze, the connection between us deepened into something I had no words for. But paradise, even one built on such precarious foundations, never lasts. It began with whispers, reports from Tanaka's intelligence network of unusual movements among rival families, meetings held in secret, resources being pooled, old enemies putting aside differences. "They're uniting against me," Tanaka said one night as we sat in his private office, papers spread across the low table between us. "Against us? Because of the changes you're making?" I asked. "Partly." His eyes met mine, something uncharacteristically hesitant in them. "And partly because of you," I stilled. "Me?" "A foreign woman at my side, privy to our most sensitive operations." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "It offends the traditionalists. They see it as further evidence I'm abandoning the old ways. Should I step back? Be less visible?" His grip tightened, Never. Hiding you would show weakness, suggest I'm ashamed. His thumb traced circles on my palm. Besides, I need you with me now more than ever. The next day, security around us doubled. I was no longer permitted to leave the house without Akira or another trusted guard. Tanaka's meetings increased, often running late into the night. The strain showed in the tension of his shoulders, the sharpness of his movements. 3 nights later, I woke alone in bed, the sheets beside me cold. Finding Tanaka's study empty, I wandered through the silent house until soft voices drew me to the garden. Through the paper doors, I could see Tanaka and Takeshi in heated discussion beside the koi pond. "Cannot trust her," Takeshi was saying, his voice urgent. "She's only been with us a month." "I trust her with my life," Tanaka replied, voice hard as steel. "That should be enough for you. The other families are using her as justification. They say you've become weak, distracted by a foreign woman. The alliance they're building." "I'm aware of the alliance," Tanaka cut him off. "And I have a plan to deal with it." "A plan that involves her?" Takeshi's voice dripped with skepticism. "May stays," Tanaka said, the familiar phrase sending a shiver down my spine. "That's final." I retreated before they could discover me eavesdropping, heart pounding. Was I putting Tanaka in danger simply by being with him? Were my selfish desires for belonging, for connection, undermining everything he'd worked for? The next morning, Tanaka announced we would attend a gala, a charity event hosted by one of Tokyo's most influential business leaders. "Many of the rival families will be there," he explained as Hana helped me into a formal kimono of deep red silk. Tanaka read, "It's an opportunity to assess the situation, and to show them you're not hiding me away," I added. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Precisely." The gala was held in a historic hotel, the ballroom transformed with cherry blossoms and lanterns. As we entered, I felt the weight of eyes upon us, some curious, some hostile. Tanaka's hand rested at the small of my back, guiding me through the crowd, his touch both possessive and protective. "Tanaka-san," a voice called. We turned to see Ishikawa approaching, Yuki at his side. Since the lake incident, our relationship with them had strengthened considerably. Ishikawa bowed respectfully. "And Mei-san, you look beautiful tonight." "Thank you," I replied in Japanese, bowing in return. "It's good to see you both." Yuki embraced me, whispering in my ear, "Be careful. Something's happening tonight. There's tension in the air." Before I could ask what she meant, a commotion near the entrance drew our attention. A group of men had arrived, their demeanor commanding immediate respect. At their center stood an older Japanese man, his hair silver, his bearing regal. "Shimada," Tanaka murmured, his body tensing beside me. "I didn't expect him to be bold enough to attend." "The man who tried to have you killed?" I whispered, fighting the urge to step closer to Tanaka. "The same." His eyes scanned the room, and not alone. "Matsuda is here too, and Nakamura." His jaw tightened. The alliance, in the flesh. Throughout the evening, I felt the undercurrents of power flowing through the room. Tanaka moved among the guests with practiced ease, but I could sense his hypervigilance, the calculation behind each conversation. Twice, I caught Shimada watching us, his expression unreadable. I was returning from the ladies' room when a hand gripped my elbow, pulling me into a secluded alcove. I found myself face to face with Takeshi, his eyes hard. "You need to leave him," he said without preamble. I tried to pull away, but his grip was firm. "Let go of me." "Listen," he hissed. "Tanaka-sama is in danger. They're planning to move against him, all of them together. But they might hesitate if you were gone." "If I were gone, they'd see it as weakness," I countered, as him bending to their will. Takeshi's expression darkened. "Better that than dead. They won't stop with him. Anyone close to him will be targeted, including you." A chill ran through me. "Why are you telling me this? Because despite what you think, I'm loyal to him." His grip loosened slightly. "I've served the Tanaka family for 20 years. I don't want to see the line end with him." "Then help him fight," I said, instead of telling me to abandon him. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "You love him," he said. Not a question, but a realization. The word struck me with the force of truth. I did love Kazuto Tanaka, loved him with a depth that terrified me, that defied logic and self-preservation. Yes, I admitted. Takeshi released me, stepping back. Then we have that in common, at least. Loyalty to him, above all else. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted in the main ballroom. Raised voices, the sound of breaking glass. Takeshi cursed under his breath, pushing past me toward the noise. I followed quickly, heart racing. The scene that greeted me was chaos. Tanaka and Shimada standing feet apart, tension radiating between them. Akira and the other bodyguards had formed a protective circle around Tanaka, hands inside their jackets where I knew weapons were concealed. "You dishonor all of us," Shimada was saying, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "With your Western ideas, your foreign whore." Tanaka's expression remained impassive, but I saw the deadly anger in his eyes. "Careful, old man," he said softly. "Even your status won't protect you if you speak of her that way again." Shimada smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "The young dragon shows his teeth. But you forget your place, Tanaka. You forget our ways." "I remember our ways perfectly," Tanaka replied, "including the consequences for those who break the peace." His eyes swept the room, taking in the other Yakuza leaders. "Is this what you want? Open war in the streets? Because that's what will happen if you move against me." A tense silence followed his words. I stood frozen at the edge of the crowd, afraid to move closer, afraid to draw attention. Then, unexpectedly, Ishikawa stepped forward, placing himself beside Tanaka. "The Tanaka Gumi has my family's support," he announced, "and our shipping routes." One by one, other men moved to stand with Tanaka. Not many, but enough to make Shimada's face darken with anger. "This isn't over," he spat, before turning and storming out, his entourage following. The tension in the room broke, conversation resuming in nervous bursts. Tanaka's eyes found mine across the crowd, relief visible in them for a fraction of a second before his mask of control returned. Later that night, back at Tanaka's home, I sat on the edge of our bed, watching as he methodically removed his cufflinks, his tie, the trappings of the evening. "Takeshi spoke to me tonight," I said quietly. "He thinks I should leave you, for your safety." Tanaka stilled, then turned to face me. "And what do you think?" "I think I love you," I said simply. "And I'm not going anywhere." Something broke open in his expression. Vulnerability, and hunger, and something so tender it made my chest ache. He crossed the room in 2 strides, kneeling before me and taking my hands in his. "Say it again," he whispered. "I love you, Kazuto Tanaka." He brought my hands to his lips, kissing each palm with a reverence that made tears spring to my eyes. "No one has said those words to me since my mother died," he said, voice rough with emotion. I had forgotten what they sounded like. "Then I'll say them every day," I promised. "Until you never forget again." He rose, pulling me to my feet and into his arms. "I won't let them hurt you," he vowed. "Any of them. I'll burn the whole city down first." I laid my hand against his cheek. "We'll face them together. Build something new, remember?" His arms tightened around me. "Together," he agreed. 2 days later, we made our stand. With Ishikawa's support and the loyalty of those who believed in Tanaka's vision, we confronted the alliance directly. The meeting was tense, negotiations brutal, but in the end, a compromise was reached. The old ways and the new would find balance. Tradition and innovation would coexist. And at Tanaka's side through it all was the American girl with Japanese eyes, wearing his mother's jade and his signature red, proof that even in the most unlikely places belonging could be found. 6 months later, in a private ceremony attended only by our closest allies, I became Mei Tanaka, binding my fate irrevocably to his. The shy waitress who answered a call beside the Japanese Mafia boss was gone, replaced by a woman who had found her strength in the arms of a dangerous man. "She stays," he had said that first night, and I did.